Hi guys, when was the last time you saw someone like Nick Robinson on Talk TV? When was the last time you saw Victoria Derbyshire, for example, on GB News? I ask these questions honestly. I'm not familiar with either of these individuals appearing on what many people see as pro-Reform UK propaganda channels. However, it appears to be happening more and more often that somebody from Talk TV or GB News appears on a BBC flagship political programme like Newsnight or the Politics Live show. Here Tom Harwood of GB News was given a platform to talk absolute tripe about Brexit and the pandemic. But why?
Now, the contention from a lot of people on the Remain side would be that the UK would have grown massively faster than any of these countries had we remained in the EU. I think that's clearly a fantasy, and the sad thing is, exactly on this same day, the 31st of January 2020, 5 years ago today, it wasn't just the same day that the UK left the EU. It was the same day the first 2 COVID cases were diagnosed in the UK, the 31st of January 2020. And every single economic fact from that moment forward has been informed not just by our relationship to Europe, but also by the fact that we were hit by a once-in-a-century pandemic. Yeah. That's why we all feel like everything is broken.
Okay, look, I'm not going to really respond to what he said here because it's absolute tripe, because the pandemic impacted every country in the world. But my question here is, why is this guy appearing on the BBC? Now, the response from people on social media has been, well, you know, the BBC it's important at the BBC to have balance. But this is not balance. This is somebody from a rival TV program or rival channel talking absolute tripe and going unchallenged by the journalists. He was challenged by other people on the panel, but see, I'm old school. I'm of the idea that journalists are supposed to hold politicians to account. Journalists are supposed to report the news. They're supposed to present the facts. They're not supposed to be there to present their opinion. See, the BBC generally prides itself on having journalists that deliver the news, that say this is what happened, provide analysis, but they keep their opinions to themselves. That's what journalists are supposed to do. They're supposed to report the news and to present what politicians are saying. And that's about as far as it's supposed to go. Like, if I'm not saying journalists can't have opinions, but their opinion is supposed to be separate from the news. So what's happening here is you have a quote-unquote journalist going on a flagship program talking absolute tripe about Brexit because he supports Brexit. He's presenting his opinion here. He's not presenting facts. Now, when it comes to balance, it's perfectly fine to have a politician on from the Conservative Party or from Reform UK or from a right-wing party, and a politician from a left-wing party or a centrist party or whatever. The politicians are not the problem, because we know the politicians are presenting their opinions. They're trying to spin their manifesto or their pledges or their promises to the public. That's understandable, because that's what politicians do. But journalists are supposed to report the news. They're supposed to hold politicians to account. What the BBC are doing here is they're putting a quote-unquote journalist into a position where he shouldn't be. He shouldn't be on this panel. He's not holding politicians to account. He's not talking facts. He's not reporting the news. He's not doing his job. Why the heck is he on this panel? Why the heck is he on Newsnight? None of this makes sense to me. People will criticize me, you're picking sides. This is not about picking sides. If you want to have a right-wing politician on, the politician is presented, and we know that this is a right-wing politician who has their opinions and is pushing a right-wing agenda. The same with a left-wing politician. We know if you have a left-wing politician on, then they're going to push a left-wing agenda. This all has to be transparent. But once again, I come back to the point I made at the beginning. Why are GB News journalists appearing on the BBC when BBC journalists are never appearing on Talk TV or GB News? Not that I have seen. Maybe there have been some occasions, but not that I've seen recently. Why is that happening? What's happening to the BBC? Why is it throwing out facts and real journalism in order to pander to I don't know who? Is this a ratings war? We need to have these Brexiteers on. We need to have these quote-unquote journalists on in order to keep the ratings up. That's not journalism. That's not the core of the BBC. There was a time when Newsnight was something that people tuned in to get critical analysis instead of ridiculous opinions. Things have to improve, and they have to be called out in order to be improved. Let me know in the comment section, guys, what you think. As always, your comments are greatly appreciated. Thanks a lot.